The day after our family barbecue, I checked my bank account and saw $52,000, 0 cents, missing. Just gone. I remember staring at my phone in my kitchen, sunlight spilling across the floor, my coffee going cold on the counter. For a few seconds, I actually thought it was a glitch. I refreshed the screen over and over, whispering to myself, no way. This isn't real. But it was. Every dollar I had saved, my future house down payment, my emergency cushion, the proof that I had made it on my own, gone in less than 2 days.
I grew up in Oregon. My mom was a high school teacher who taught me to stand on my own feet, to never rely on anyone for my security. My dad, Tom, was the charming type, the kind of man who made everyone laugh at parties, but forgot to pay the mortgage. When my mom died of ovarian cancer, I was 28. I thought losing her was the worst heartbreak I'd ever face. I didn't realize it was only the beginning.
Dad fell apart after she passed. He quit working, started hanging around poker games, and met Diane. A woman who seemed too polished, too perfect, too interested in fixing his life. She had a son, Noah, who barely looked up from his screen, and a fake, sweet smile that never reached his eyes. I tried to stay polite. I visited for holidays, called on birthdays, and convinced myself that keeping the peace was what my mum would have wanted. But I started noticing small things. The brand new Tesla parked in Dad's driveway, Diane's luxury yoga retreats, Noah's expensive gaming setups. Dad said it was all new investments paying off, but he never explained what those investments were. At family dinners, Diane would make snide comments about how I was always working, always saving, never living. Dad laughed along, almost embarrassed that I still drove a used Honda and cooked at home instead of dining out every night. I felt the shift, slowly. I became the outsider in my own family. They flaunted designer bags while I held onto my plain leather tote. They took ski trips to Aspen while I picked up extra shifts to build my client base. Every time I tried to pull away, Dad guilted me back in with memories of Mum or the old "we're family" line. But that morning, standing in my kitchen, staring at the empty balance, something inside me hardened. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone across the room. I just stood there, breathing slow and steady, because they had no idea what I was about to do next. When I confronted my father that evening, the moment felt almost surreal. I pulled up to his suburban house just before sunset. The air was thick and heavy, the sky streaked with that soft orange glow that makes everything feel more dramatic than it already is. I knocked once. Diane opened the door, her lips curled in that same polite smile she always wore, the one that looked rehearsed. She stepped aside without a word, her eyes scanning me up and down like I was an unexpected package she didn't remember ordering. My father sat on the couch, remote in hand, a basketball game playing in the background. He looked up, paused, and smirked. Not the warm, fatherly smile I remembered from my childhood when he used to surprise me with ice cream after school. This was different, a practiced, dismissive curl of the lips, the kind of smirk you give someone you think you have complete power over. He didn't even ask why I was there. I stood there, trying to find a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Nothing. Just boredom, as if I had interrupted a quiet Sunday evening instead of showing up to reclaim my life savings. Diane crossed her arms, leaned against the kitchen counter, and watched. Noah sat on the floor, his headphones around his neck, his fingers flipping mindlessly through his phone. I told them about the missing money, about the transfers, about how I had already spoken to the bank. My voice was calm. Too calm, maybe. My father didn't even flinch. He leaned forward, rested his elbows on his knees, and said, "Laura, you're young. You'll make it back. We needed that money. Family helps each other out." A phrase so casual, so final, that it stung more than any outright insult could have. I glanced at Diane. She didn't even bother pretending. She was already celebrating her victory, her shoulders relaxed, her nails tapping the counter in a rhythm that felt like a countdown to my defeat. That was when I realized They didn't just take my money, they took my trust, my sense of safety, my connection to what little family I had left, and they did it without a shred of shame. The small humiliations started to surface in my mind like bruises I hadn't noticed before. Diane's offhand comments at dinner about how I was so uptight for saving money instead of travelling more. Dad's backhanded jokes about me living alone, how I was too serious and no fun. Noah's snickers when I drove up in my old Honda, compared to his expensive new gadgets. It was never about love or family. It was always about power, control. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen, replaying every moment from the past few years. Every dinner where Diane subtly undermined me. Every text from Dad asking for small loans that I always said no to. Every fake smile. Every manipulative guilt trip. I started making lists. Names, dates, amounts, times they borrowed my phone, moments when they asked me to step out to take a call or help with dishes while Noah had my phone. Then I pulled my laptop closer. I started downloading my bank statements, going back years. Every transaction. Every odd transfer I might have overlooked. I checked my credit report, my investment accounts, even my old PayPal. I sat in silence, my only company the low hum of my refrigerator. As I dug deeper, I realized this wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign. There were small transfers to unknown accounts I hadn't noticed, unauthorized credit checks, subscription charges I never signed up for, each tiny cut adding up to one massive, deliberate theft of my autonomy. In that quiet, sterile light of my kitchen, something inside me hardened into steel. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my coffee mug across the room. I didn't scream into a pillow. Instead, I took a deep breath and made a second list. Lawyers, investigators, old friends in cybersecurity, clients who owed me favors. I set up meetings. I bought an external hard drive and started backing up every email, every text, every bank notification. I installed new security apps on my phone. I ordered a new number and transferred my two-factor authentication codes. The next morning, I put on my black blazer, the one I usually wore for big investor presentations, and walked into a local law office downtown. The receptionist looked up, probably expecting someone about a traffic ticket or a landlord dispute. I handed over my folder, thick with printed statements, photos and notes. Jessica Lee, my attorney, didn't flinch. She sat across from me, flipping through each page carefully. She nodded once, twice, then closed the folder and looked me straight in the eye. "This is strong," she said, "and if we handle it right, you won't just get your money back. You'll take away the power they think they have over you." It was the first time in days that I felt a flicker of warmth in my chest. Over the next week, I worked like a machine. During the day, I met with Jessica and her team, handed over new evidence, reviewed affidavits. At night, I double-checked every digital lock on my accounts. I replaced passwords. I froze my credit. On the outside, I showed up to work as if nothing happened. I joined team meetings, finished client reports, went for my morning runs. My colleagues joked about my calm energy, unaware I was preparing for the most important battle of my life. When Dad texted me to talk this out as a family, I replied, "Of course." When Diane called, her voice dripping sugar, asking if I was feeling okay, I answered with polite, short sentences. I thanked her for caring. I kept my voice warm but detached, like I was speaking to a stranger at the grocery store. They thought I was scared. They thought they'd broken me. Meanwhile, Jessica filed the civil lawsuit quietly. She arranged a private investigator to dig into Diane's background. She reached out to old contacts to confirm aliases, old debts, fake businesses. I let them believe they had won. I played my role. The naive daughter, the soft-hearted girl who would eventually forgive and forget. But under the surface, every day, every hour, I was setting the trap tighter and tighter. I waited, patiently, like a surgeon before an incision. Calm hands, focused mind. When I finally saw the subpoena drafts and the investigator's final report, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Absolute control. They thought I was too serious, too independent, too cold. They had no idea that those were the very traits that would end them. He thought he broke me. What he didn't know was I was just getting started. When the court date finally arrived, I woke up before sunrise. I brewed my coffee slowly, savouring the silence of my apartment. My black blazer hung on the back of a chair, pressed and waiting. I checked my files one last time, all the statements, screenshots, transfer logs and emails, perfectly organised, labelled and ready. I didn't tremble. I didn't rush. I moved like I was preparing for a final presentation to a major client, calm, deliberate, focused. When I arrived at the courthouse, Jessica, my attorney, met me at the entrance. She nodded once, her eyes scanning my face as if searching for any last cracks, but there were none. We entered the courtroom. Diane sat on one side, dressed in a stiff navy suit that tried to scream respectable wife instead of fraud artist. Noah slouched beside her, his expression hidden behind shaggy hair. My father sat closest to the aisle, shoulders tense, hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles turned white. The judge called us in. Jessica rose first. She spoke clearly, each sentence landing like a hammer on steel. She laid out the timeline, the evidence, the manipulations, and the string of financial betrayals. She pointed to every dollar transferred, each false story, every lie Diane had spun. She presented photos, logs from Noah's laptop, and bank alerts that all lined up exactly when I was visiting, the times my phone had been borrowed. Then came the investigator's report on Diane. Real name, Deborah Klein. A trail of fraud, stretching across 3 states, 3 ex-husbands, multiple aliases. Unpaid debts, false businesses, stolen retirement accounts. Each revelation stripped away any last layer of her carefully curated image. For a moment, the room felt like it wasn't breathing. My father's attorney tried to argue that my father had been pressured and emotionally manipulated. But the evidence was too sharp, too overwhelming. There was no room for spin. I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. Every document, every receipt, every screenshot spoke for me. Diane's face turned from arrogant to ghostly pale as the judge read each count aloud. Her hands shook as she tried to scribble notes to her lawyer, but he didn't even glance at her. Noah fidgeted, his eyes darting to the floor, then to the back of the room, as if searching for an exit. My father sat there, frozen, as if he'd finally realised the weight of what he'd helped orchestrate. When Diane was finally asked to respond, she stood shakily. Her voice cracked as she insisted she was misunderstood, that she loved this family, that she only wanted to help Tom manage his finances. But the judge interrupted her after less than a minute, telling her to sit down. It was over before she even realised it. The ruling came down. I felt no surge of triumph, no loud victory drum. Just a slow, powerful warmth spreading through my chest. A quiet reclaiming of everything they tried to steal. Diane and Noah were ordered to pay full restitution plus damages. Diane was immediately taken into custody for fraud and identity theft charges. Noah, who cooperated at the last minute, was released pending further hearings, but stripped of access to all devices, and ordered to remain under surveillance. My father, Tom, was ordered to enter mandatory treatment for gambling addiction and faced personal financial penalties. He wasn't handcuffed like Diane, but as he stood, his posture sagged, his head lowered. He looked decades older than he had just weeks before. He turned to me as they led Diane away, her eyes wild, her voice rising in half-formed curses that bounced off the marble walls. My father didn't say a word. I didn't either. We just stood, 2 people on opposite shores of a collapsed bridge. When I stepped outside, the air hit my face like a wave of cold water. The sun had climbed higher, bright and sharp. I inhaled deeply, letting the weight start to slide off my shoulders, molecule by molecule. In the weeks that followed, I systematically rebuilt. I unfroze my credit, reclaimed my accounts, met with new financial advisors and updated every single password, every layer of my life. I moved to a new apartment with a doorman, security cameras and reinforced digital locks. I started therapy twice a week. I attended meetings for survivors of family financial abuse, where I listened and shared without shame. Each story mirrored mine in some small way, different details, same poison. My father tried to call once from the treatment center. I let it ring. I saved the voicemail, but I never listened to it and focused on myself, on the small joys I'd neglected. Morning runs without checking my phone 10 times, cooking elaborate dinners just for me, reading late into the night without waiting for a toxic text or guilt-tripping email. I resumed my community workshops on financial independence. This time, though, I added a new module: protecting yourself from the ones you trust most. Women leaned forward in those sessions, eyes wide, nodding slowly as I spoke about red flags, digital safety and emotional boundaries. In every slide, every sentence, I felt my spine straighten a little more. One morning, I received a letter from Megan, Diane's daughter, the one who had helped me in secret. She wrote about moving away, starting over, enrolling in college far from the chaos. She ended her letter with, "Thank you for showing me that we're not trapped by the families we're born into. We can build our own." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a small wooden box. That same evening, I sat on my new balcony overlooking the city lights, a glass of wine in hand, my breathing slow and even. I had regained my savings, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my voice, my peace, my self-respect. I didn't scream in court. I didn't tear down walls or throw dishes. I dismantled them piece by piece, quietly, methodically, exactly how they never expected. I walked away without begging for closure or apologies. I didn't look back, didn't check if they regretted anything. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, finally standing alone and not feeling lonely. Now, when people ask me if I miss my father or wonder if I'll forgive Diane someday, I smile gently. The truth is, forgiveness is a luxury I don't owe anyone. I chose to protect myself, and that is enough. He thought he broke me. He was wrong. After the trial, life didn't instantly turn into a movie, ending with confetti and happy music. Healing was slow, quiet, almost invisible at first. I moved into a new apartment on the edge of the city. It wasn't flashy or big, just a bright, sunlit space with a small balcony overlooking a row of maple trees. On the first morning there, I woke up before sunrise, made a pot of strong coffee, and watched the city come alive through my window. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up bracing for a new crisis. No unexpected messages, no guilt-laced voicemails. It was silence, the good kind. I started working from home more, taking on clients who inspired me, rather than those who drained me. My schedule became mine again. I began running in the mornings without feeling the need to check my phone every 5 minutes. I cooked meals slowly, reading recipes, savouring each step. I sat on my balcony at night with a book and a glass of wine, feeling the air on my skin, listening to the wind move through the leaves. I no longer felt the urge to explain myself to anyone. I didn't feel the constant need to justify my boundaries, my choices, my solitude. It was as if I had been living underwater for years, learning to hold my breath longer and longer, and now, finally, I had broken the surface. I inhaled, fully. I took trips alone, something I'd always dreamed of but had postponed endlessly. I visited small coastal towns, wandered into local bookstores, bought used paperbacks that smelled like dust and sea salt. I sat in tiny cafes, writing in my journal, watching strangers go about their lives.
I adopted a rescue dog, a quiet golden retriever named Max, a name that ironically helped me reclaim a piece of power. Max followed me around the apartment, curling up by my feet while I worked, reminding me daily that loyalty didn't have to hurt. My work evolved too. I expanded my financial workshops, shifting from technical budgeting lessons to deeper conversations about emotional safety and autonomy. Women, especially, would linger after the sessions, telling me their stories in hushed voices. Stories about manipulative partners, demanding parents, controlling siblings. We nodded together, shared that heavy silence that only survivors recognize. One evening, after a session, a woman stayed behind. She looked about my age, her eyes tired but bright. She waited until everyone else had left, then whispered, "You make me believe I can start over too." That night, I lay in bed replaying her words. They felt like a mirror, reflecting the quiet strength I had been rebuilding piece by piece. Through it all, I learned to separate forgiveness from reconciliation. I didn't forgive to let them back in. I forgave to release myself, to cut the rope tying me to their chaos. I didn't answer my father's letters, but I kept them. Each envelope marked another attempt at his own healing, a silent record of the consequences of his choices. I didn't hate him anymore, but I no longer saw him as my father, more like a distant figure from an old story that no longer belonged to me. Sometimes people ask if I miss having a family. My answer surprises them. I tell them I never lost my family. I lost a story I had been telling myself, that love must always come with sacrifice, that blood automatically means loyalty, that keeping the peace is more important than keeping yourself safe. I discovered that family can be chosen, in friends who showed up with ice cream and quiet hugs when I felt like I was falling apart, in colleagues who stepped in to cover meetings without asking why, in women I met at workshops who shared pieces of their hearts with me. Now my days feel lighter. I don't scan every room for exits or glance at my phone expecting bad news. My mornings start with quiet gratitude instead of dread. My nights end in peace instead of restless worry. I no longer feel the need to defend my solitude or explain my independence. I no longer chase after apologies or closure that will never come. The biggest lesson I carried forward is simple. Being kind does not mean being weak. For so long, I believed that if I loved hard enough, forgave deeply enough, gave endlessly, I could fix anyone. But the truth is, kindness without boundaries is just self-destruction dressed up as virtue. Some wounds will never get a formal apology. Some betrayals never come with a confession. And that's okay, because healing isn't about getting what you think you're owed. It's about giving yourself what you deserve. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt trapped, cornered, or betrayed by the people closest to you, please remember you're not alone. You are not weak for trusting. You are not foolish for loving, but you are allowed to stop. You are allowed to draw a line. You are allowed to choose yourself. Now I look at my reflection and I don't see the woman who stood in my father's living room begging for dignity. I see a woman who dismantled her entire world and built something stronger from the wreckage. Don't miss the old story. I don't long for the old ties. Today, I sit on my balcony, a warm cup of tea in my hands, my dog snoring gently at my feet. I breathe deeply, feeling my chest expand, feeling my heart steady and unburdened. I don't feel victorious because they lost. I feel victorious because I came home to myself. And today I smiled, not because they fell, but because I rose